I was still numb from the waist down when my father walked into my hospital room with a lawyer's folder under his arm. My daughter was less than 36 hours old. I had not slept properly in 2 days. There was an IV taped to my hand, a blood pressure cuff squeezing my arm every 15 minutes, and a fresh C-section incision burning across my lower abdomen every time I breathed too deeply. I was sitting halfway up in bed, trying to feed my newborn daughter, when my father closed the door behind him. Not gently, quietly. That was worse. Behind him came my mother, my older brother, and my brother's wife. No flowers, no balloons, no soft congratulations. Just four faces arranged around my hospital bed like I was not a patient recovering from emergency surgery, but a problem they had come to solve. My father placed the folder on my lap, right on top of the blanket covering my incision. "Sign it," he said. I looked down. The first page read, "Temporary assignment of minor beneficiary inheritance rights." My baby made a tiny sound against my chest. My fingers tightened around her. "What is this?" My brother's wife, Camille, folded her arms. "It's a correction." My mother stood near the door, looking through the glass window into the hallway like she was checking whether any nurses were coming. My father uncapped a pen and held it out. "You're tired, Lena. Don't make this harder than it needs to be." The room seemed to shrink. The pain medication made the edges of everything soft, but his voice cut through clearly. My daughter had been born the day before after 17 hours of labor and an emergency C-section when her heart rate dropped. The doctors had moved fast. My husband, Daniel, had cried beside my head while they pulled her from me into the world. We named her Ava Tiny, perfect, furious from the first breath. And now my family was standing in my maternity room trying to take something from her before she could even open her eyes properly. I pushed the papers away. "I'm not signing anything." My father's face changed, not dramatically. He was too controlled for that. But the coldness came in, the same coldness I had known since childhood. "Lena," he said, "your brother has spent years preparing to manage this family's assets. You are emotional. Your husband is a firefighter. You don't understand what kind of responsibility your daughter just triggered." Triggered. That was the word he used for my baby's birth. Not blessed. Not welcomed, triggered. My father leaned closer. "This inheritance belongs with the family branch that can protect it." I looked at my brother, Russell. He would not meet my eyes. Camille did. She stared at Ava like my daughter had stolen something from her womb. Then my father said, "Sign the assignment, or we will make sure the court understands you are not mentally stable enough to manage anything for that child." My mother whispered, "Arthur, lower your voice." My father ignored her. He grabbed the edge of the paper and shoved it back toward me. The movement jarred the blanket against my incision. I gasped, Ava startled, and began to cry. That was when the curtain near the door moved. None of us noticed at first. But Nurse Elena Morales had been standing outside my room for almost 3 minutes. She had heard everything. And because my father had already raised his voice once in the hallway before entering, she had activated the hospital's workplace violence incident recording on her staff device. My father thought he had trapped me in a private room. He had no idea the nurse had been recording everything. My name is Lena Whitford Hale. I was 31 years old when my father tried to make me sign away my newborn daughter's inheritance from a hospital bed. Before I tell you how Nurse Elena's recording turned my father's perfect plan into a legal nightmare by the next morning, I want you to answer honestly in the comments. If your own family came to your hospital room after surgery with papers for your baby's money, would you ever forgive them? Comment "Protect the baby" if you already know my father crossed a line no parent should ever cross. And subscribe if you like stories where the quiet daughter finally stops letting family greed decide her future. To understand why my father came to that room, you need to understand the Whitford family. We were not rich in the soft, comfortable way. We were rich in the exhausting way, the kind of family where every dinner sounded like a board meeting, every birthday gift came with an expectation, and every act of affection had a financial shadow behind it. My father, Arthur Whitford, ran Whitford Development Group, a regional property company started by my grandfather. He loved three things: control, appearances, and my older brother, Russell, was the heir in every way that mattered to my father. He had the name, the confidence, the right golf friends, and the ability to say absolutely nothing useful while still sounding expensive. Growing up, I was the useful daughter. Russell was the legacy. If Russell failed a math test, my father hired a tutor. If I got the highest score in the class, he said, "Don't get arrogant." If Russell crashed a company car at 22, Dad called it a learning experience. If I scratched the side mirror of my used Honda, he told me carelessness was a character flaw. My mother, Vivian, floated around the edges of our family like expensive wallpaper, beautiful. Quiet, always adjusting the room so my father never had to adjust himself. She loved me, I think, but she loved comfort more. And in our house, comfort meant not opposing Arthur Whitford. My grandmother, Beatrice, was different. She was my father's mother, and the only person in the family who did not fear him. She wore pearls with house slippers, drank black coffee after dinner, and once told a banker, "Don't use that voice with me. I had assets before you had teeth." I adored her. She taught me to read balance sheets before I was old enough to drive. She taught me that money was not evil, but weakness around money made people dangerous. Most importantly, she taught me to protect what was mine. "Lena," she used to say, tapping my hand with one polished nail, "never sign while someone is rushing you." Urgency is the perfume of manipulation. When I was 26, Grandma Beatrice changed her estate plan. Nobody knew the details except her attorney. My father assumed everything would eventually flow through Russell, because that was how he believed the universe worked. But Grandma knew Russell. She knew he gambled with investor money. She knew Camille loved the Whitford name more than she loved him. She knew my father had been quietly using company credit to cover lifestyle debt. And she knew I was the only one who had ever loved her without waiting for the will. When Grandma died, the family discovered the clause. The Beatrice Whitford Descendant Trust would pass control of a protected investment portfolio and 2 income-producing properties to the first biological child, born to either Russell or me. Until that child turned 25, the child's mother would act as managing guardian of the trust, not the father, not the grandfather. The mother, Grandma, had written that part specifically. I could almost hear her voice when the attorney read it. Men in this family have had enough chances. At the time, nobody panicked. Russell and Camille had been trying for a baby for 4 years. My husband Daniel and I were not trying at all. My father believed the trust would eventually land where he wanted, with Russell, through Camille, under his influence. Then Daniel and I got pregnant. I will never forget the day I told my family. We were at Sunday dinner in my parents' formal dining room. I was nervous, excited, still holding the ultrasound picture in my purse like a secret heartbeat. When I said, "We're having a baby," my mother smiled politely. Russell froze. Camille's face went completely blank. My father stared at me for one long second and asked, "How far along?" "Not congratulations, not are you feeling okay? How far along?" When I told him 14 weeks, he looked at Camille. Just for a moment. But I saw it, the calculation. From that day on, my pregnancy became a threat. My father began calling more often, asking about appointments, asking whether the doctors were sure about due dates, asking whether I had reviewed the estate implications. Camille stopped inviting me to family lunches. Russell became overly friendly in the way people become when they are waiting for you to make a mistake they can use. When we learned the baby was a girl, I thought maybe the tension would ease. It did not. Grandma's trust did not require a boy. That had been my father's assumption, not her law. The trust said first biological descendant, Ava was the first, and that made my daughter, before she was even born, the legal key to assets my father had spent years planning to control. Daniel saw the danger before I did. He had grown up in a completely different kind of family. His father was a retired paramedic. His mother ran a small bakery. They argued loudly, forgave quickly, and never treated money like a religion. When Daniel first met my parents, he was polite. Afterward, in the car, he said, "Your father doesn't talk to people. He places them." I laughed then. I should not have. By the final month of my pregnancy, Daniel was asking me not to take calls from my father unless he was in the room. I told him he was being dramatic. Then my father sent the first document. It came by email, subject line, "Estate planning clarification." Before birth, the attachment was a proposed family governance agreement. Buried on page 7 was language that would allow my father, as senior family advisor, to approve any trust-related decisions until my child turned 18. I forwarded it to Grandma's attorney, Malcolm Pierce. His response came back in 13 minutes. "Do not sign this. Do not discuss this without counsel. Your grandmother designed the trust specifically to prevent this." I saved that email. I saved every email after that, the revised agreement, the temporary advisory form, the medical incapacity contingency, the postpartum estate delegation. Each one looked softer than the last. Each one tried to move control away from me. Then labor came early, not dangerously early, but early enough to make everyone move fast. At 38 weeks, my blood pressure spiked. Doctors induced me. 17 hours later, Ava's heart rate dropped so suddenly the room changed from calm to emergency. Nurses rolled me to surgery while Daniel held my hand and kept saying, "I'm right here. I'm right here." The C-section saved our daughter, but it left me shattered. People talk about birth like a soft miracle. Sometimes it is bright lights, shaking hands, a curtain across your chest, and the sound of your husband crying because he is terrified he might lose both people he loves at once. By the next afternoon, I could barely sit up, my incision burned, my body felt foreign. Ava had trouble latching. I cried because I was tired, because she was beautiful, because I was scared, because hormones are not emotions so much as weather systems moving through your bones. Daniel stayed beside me until hospital billing called about an insurance issue. He kissed my forehead. I'll be downstairs for 20 minutes. I should have asked him not to go, but I was tired of needing. Go, I said. We'll be okay. 10 minutes later, my father walked in. With the folder, with my mother, with Russell, with Camille, he did not ask how I felt. He did not ask to see Ava. He did not say she was beautiful. He said, sign it. When I refused, everything moved quickly. My father leaned over me, voice low and sharp. You have no idea what you're doing. That trust is too complex for you. I have an attorney. His mouth twisted. You have a firefighter husband and postpartum hormones. Russell stepped closer. Lena, don't turn this into a war. Just sign temporary management to Dad. We'll revisit it once you're stable. Stable. I had just been cut open to bring a child into the world, and they were using my recovery as evidence against me. Camille said, some of us planned our entire future around that trust. I looked at her. That was your mistake. Her face flashed with hatred. Ava began crying again. I tried to shift her gently, but pain shot across my abdomen. My father saw weakness and mistook it for opportunity. He grabbed the papers, pushed them toward my hand, and placed the pen between my fingers. Sign your name. I dropped the pen. No. His face changed, the mask cracked. He grabbed my wrist. Hard Ava screamed. My mother whispered, Arthur, quiet. He pressed my hand toward the signature line. I pulled back. Pain ripped through my incision so sharply I cried out. That was when Nurse Elena entered. She opened the door quickly but calmly. Is everything okay in here? My father released my wrist instantly. Like a man who had practiced appearing innocent, he smiled. Family discussion. Elena's eyes moved from my face to Ava's crying, to the documents, to my mother blocking part of the doorway, then to my wrist. She saw the red marks. She saw everything. I need to check Mrs. Hale's vitals, she said. My father did not move. This will only take a minute. No, Elena said, still calm. Now. There are people who raise their voice to show power, and there are people who do not need to. Nurse Elena was the second kind. My father stared at her. She stared back. Finally, he stepped aside, but he made one last mistake. As Elena moved toward my bed, he leaned close and whispered, the police won't care about a hysterical postpartum woman. Sign before discharge, or we start custody proceedings. Elena's eyes flicked down to the staff device clipped to her scrub pocket. The red incident light was blinking, recording. My father did not see it. I did. For the first time since he entered the room, I felt something stronger than fear. A witness, Elena helped me place Ava safely in the bassinet. Then she pressed the call button on the wall. Security to room 412. Now. My father snapped, that is unnecessary. Elena looked at him. You threatened my patient while she is recovering from surgery. Russell grabbed the folder. Camille grabbed her purse. My mother said we should go, but it was too late. Hospital security arrived before they made it to the elevator. Daniel arrived at the same time, breathless, confused, holding insurance papers. He saw security, then saw me crying, then saw my wrist. His face went white. What happened? I pointed at the folder in Russell's hand. They tried to make me sign away Ava's trust. Daniel turned toward my father. I had seen my husband angry before. I had never seen him like that. Completely still, like fire before oxygen. My father tried to speak first. She is confused. She's medicated. We were helping. Nurse Elena cut him off. No, sir. You were recorded pressuring and threatening a post-surgical patient. The hallway went silent. My father looked at her device, then at me, then at Daniel. For the first time in my life, I saw real fear in Arthur Whitford's eyes. Not regret, fear. That was all he understood. The hospital removed them from the maternity floor. Security took statements. Elena filed an incident report. The charge nurse documented my wrist. A doctor examined my incision to make sure I had not torn anything during the struggle. Daniel held Ava with one arm and my hand with the other. I should not have left, he whispered. No, I said. They should not have come. That distinction mattered. For once, I refused to let the wrong person carry guilt. The next morning became my father's nightmare. At 8:15 a.m., Grandma Beatrice's attorney, Malcolm Pierce, arrived at the hospital with Daniel's father, Robert, who was a retired police captain. Malcolm wore a charcoal suit and the expression of a man who had been waiting years for Arthur Whitford to make a mistake large enough to punish. He placed a leather folder on my bedside table. Lena, he said, your grandmother anticipated pressure. She built protections for this. I almost cried. Of course she had. Even dead, Grandma was still standing between me and them. Malcolm explained everything. The moment Ava was born, I became the sole managing guardian of the Beatrice Whitford Descendant Trust until Ava turned 25. Any attempt to coerce, threaten, or misrepresent my authority could trigger a protective clause. That clause allowed the trust to suspend all advisory access from any family member attempting interference, including my father, including Russell, including any company officer aligned with them. I stared at him. What does that mean? It means, Malcolm said, your father does not know it yet, but as of this morning, he has lost access to every trust-controlled voting share he has been using as leverage for years. Daniel looked up. He's out? Malcolm smiled slightly. Not out of the family, out of control. Robert, Daniel's father, leaned forward. The recording also gives you enough for a restraining order if you want it. I looked at Ava sleeping in the bassinet, tiny fists curled near her face. My father had threatened custody while she was still wearing a hospital bracelet. Yes, I said, I want it. By noon, the hospital had turned over the incident recording through proper legal channels. By 1, Malcolm sent formal notices to the Whitford Development Group Board, the trust officers, my father, Russell, and the family attorney. By 3, my father's company email access to trust documents was suspended. By 4, Russell's signing authority on 2 trust-linked property accounts was frozen. By 5, Camille deleted every social media post hinting that big family changes were coming. Too late. Screenshots live longer than pride. My father called Daniel first. Daniel did not answer. He called my room phone. The nurse unplugged it. He called Malcolm. Malcolm answered and, I later learned, said only, Arthur, you threatened a recovering surgical patient on a hospital recording. Choose your next sentence carefully. My father hung up. For 3 days, we stayed in the hospital. Those days were supposed to be about healing. In a way they were. Not peaceful healing. Protective healing. The kind where every boundary becomes medicine. My mother sent one text. Your father was under pressure. Please don't destroy this family. I stared at it for a long time. Then I typed back. He threatened mine. That was the only response I ever sent once we were home. Malcolm began the audit Grandma's trust had authorized. I had not known about that either. Another hidden protection. If any family member attempted coercion after the birth of the first descendant, the managing guardian could order a full review of all trust-related transactions from the past 5 years. My father had built his entire empire on the assumption no one would look too closely. Grandma built the trust knowing one day someone would. The audit found problems within a week: improper transfers, consulting fees paid to Russell for work he had not done, renovation invoices tied to Camille's private residence, personal travel coded as property inspections, a luxury SUV leased through a trust-adjacent account. My father had not stolen everything. Men like him rarely do one big theft. They prefer 100 small ones they can explain individually. Together, they made a pattern. And patterns are harder to lie about. The trust board called an emergency meeting. I attended by video from my living room, with Ava asleep against my chest and Daniel beside me. My father appeared from his office, red-faced and furious. Russell appeared from his house, looking like a boy caught cheating on an exam. Camille hovered behind him until the board chair told her she was not authorized to attend. That was satisfying. The chair read the hospital incident summary first. My father interrupted. This is a private family matter. The board chair looked at him. Threatening the managing guardian of a $12 million trust is not private. Then they played the audio. My father's voice filled the meeting. Sign it. You are emotional. We will make sure the court understands you are not mentally stable enough to manage anything for that child. Sign before discharge, or we start custody proceedings. No one spoke after it ended, not for several seconds. Then Malcolm presented the financial findings. By the time he finished, my father was no longer arguing. He was calculating how much could be denied, how much could be blamed on staff, how much could be shifted to Russell. I knew his face. I had seen that expression my whole life. It was the look he wore when deciding who would pay for his mistakes. This time, the answer was him. The board voted unanimously. Arthur Whitford was removed from all trust advisory roles. Russell's access was suspended pending repayment review. A forensic accounting firm was appointed. All trust communications would go through me and Malcolm, and any future contact with me, Daniel, or Ava outside approved legal channels would be treated as harassment. My father slammed his laptop shut before the meeting ended. Good. Let him leave first for once. The public fallout came later. Whitford Development Group was private, but private companies still have lenders, partners, clients, and whispers. 2 deals fell apart. A bank requested additional documentation. A longtime investor asked why Arthur had been removed from the trust structure. Someone leaked enough to the local business press for a short article to appear. Whitford Family Trust under review after internal governance dispute. Governance dispute. That was the polite phrase. Behind closed doors, everyone knew the truth. Arthur Whitford had walked into his daughter's hospital room with papers and walked out without his power. Camille left Russell for 3 weeks. Then came back when she realized divorce would not produce money that no longer existed. My mother tried to visit once. She stood on our porch holding a baby blanket and crying. Daniel answered the door. I stood behind him with Ava in my arms. My mother looked at me. I didn't know he would go that far. I said, "You guarded the door." Her face crumpled. I was scared of him, so was I. She reached for the blanket. "Please, let me give her this." I looked at the soft pink fabric. Then at the woman who had watched my father threaten my newborn's future and called it pressure. No, she lowered the blanket. "I'm her grandmother." I held Ava closer. "You were my mother first." She left crying. I did cry after that, not because I missed her exactly. Because some part of me had finally accepted she was never going to become brave in time to protect me. That grief was quiet, but deep. Months passed. My incision healed into a red line that slowly faded. Ava grew round cheeks and serious eyes. Daniel returned to work. I learned how to be a mother while also managing a trust my grandmother had placed into my hands like a shield. The money did not make me feel powerful. The boundaries did. Every decision for Ava went through a financial advisor, attorney, and independent trustee. No one family member could touch the principal. Not me, not Daniel, not anyone. That was how Grandma wanted it. Protection, not indulgence. On Ava's first birthday, we held a small party in our backyard. Daniel's parents came. My best friend brought cupcakes. Nurse Elena came too. Yes, I invited her. She arrived with a tiny stuffed elephant and hugged me carefully, even though I no longer needed careful handling. "You saved us," I told her. She shook her head. "No, I documented what happened. You saved yourself." That stayed with me because she was right. The recording mattered, the legal protections mattered, the trust mattered. But the moment everything changed was the moment I said no with my newborn daughter in my arms. No to my father, no to the papers, no to fear. No to the old belief that being a good daughter meant surrendering whatever the family demanded. Later that evening, after Ava smashed cake into her hair and fell asleep exhausted, I opened the safe in our bedroom. Inside was Grandma Beatrice's trust letter. The hospital incident report, the recording transcript, the unsigned assignment papers, and one photo of Ava in the hospital bassinet, her tiny fist raised beside her face like she had entered the world ready to object. I kept those documents for one reason. Someday, my daughter will be old enough to understand that inheritance is not only money. Sometimes inheritance is courage. Sometimes it is a grandmother writing protections into a trust because she knows the men after her will mistake greed for legacy. Sometimes it is a nurse pressing record because a patient's voice deserves a witness. Sometimes it is a mother, stitched together after surgery, whispering no when everyone in the room expects her to fold. My father tried to make me sign away my baby's inheritance after my C-section. He thought pain made me weak. He thought exhaustion made me controllable. He thought family meant access. He was wrong. Pain made me clear. Exhaustion removed my patience. And motherhood turned every old wound into a locked door he would never walk through again. If you are listening to this because someone in your family has ever used your weakest moment to demand your money, your signature, your silence, or your child's future, remember this. Never sign because someone is standing over you. Never confuse pressure with love. Never let anyone call greed a family matter. And never underestimate the quiet witness in the room. My father came to the hospital with papers. He left with a recording. And by the next morning, the empire he spent his whole life controlling had already begun slipping out of his hands. My name is Lena Whitford Hale. My daughter is safe. Her inheritance is protected. And the family that tried to steal her future will never again be allowed close enough to touch it. If this story made your heart race, comment "Protect the baby" below. Tell me honestly, would you ever speak to a father again after what Arthur did? Or would that hospital door stay closed forever? And subscribe for more emotional stories where the quiet daughter finally becomes the mother nobody can break.